Southeast Asia has a unique flavor full of exotic sights, sounds, tastes, and textures. Steeped in a history of powerful dynasties, diverse religious traditions, and political transformations, these countries offered eye-opening contrasts from modern cities with ancient golden temples to remote villages and farming by hand. After an overnight flight crossing the international dateline, our group began its exploration of Southeast Asia in Kuala Lumpur, or KL for short, Malaysia. A set of colonies established by the United Kingdom in the late 18th century, Malaysia is now a federation that consists of 13 states and 3 federal territories. Malaysia has a population of around 28 million. Kuala Lumpur is also known as the Garden City of Light. The capital of Malaysia, it is the most modern and developed city in the country, but still boasts a mix of Asian cultures, including Malay, Arab, Chinese, and Indian. Heavy traffic, bustling sidewalk vendors, and street markets greeted us as we entered the city. KL Tower was opened in 1996 and sits in the center of a small forest reserve in the heart of Kuala Lumpur. It is used for communication purposes and features an antenna that reaches 421 meters, 1,381 feet, which currently makes it the 4th tallest tower in the world. The observation deck offers a beautiful 360-degree view of the city and surrounding countryside. The Batu Caves Temple Complex is a natural limestone cavern housing an ornate Hindu shrine and can only be reached by climbing 272 steps up Rocky Hill. The cave is one of the most popular Hindu shrines outside India, dedicated to Lord Muruga, the Hindu god of war. The gleaming 130 feet high statue of Lord Muruga was unveiled in January 2006 and is the tallest of its kind in the world. While walking around at the base of the complex, we were delighted to see a troop of long-tailed macaques. We journeyed out of KL to visit Malacca, founded in 1403. It was once a powerful empire and seaport in Southeast Asia, controlling the trade of goods through the Straits of Malacca. The Portuguese, Dutch, and British have all ruled over Malacca's silk and spice trade. The rich heritage is evident in the unique mix of architectural styles. Agriculture remains an important sector of Malaysia's economy, contributing approximately 12% to the national GDP and providing employment for 16% of the population. The British established large-scale plantations and introduced new commercial crops: rubber in 1876, palm oil in 1917, and cocoa in the 1950s. Those 3 crops, rubber, palm oil, and cocoa, have dominated agricultural exports ever since. In addition to these products, Malaysian farmers produce a number of fruits and vegetables for the domestic market, including bananas, coconuts, durian, pineapples, and rice. The Malaysian tropical climate is very favorable for the production of various exotic fruits and vegetables, especially since peninsular Malaysia seldom experiences hurricanes or droughts. Malaysia is one of the world's largest producers of palm oil, which has numerous uses for food and non-food applications. As one of the best natural sources of carotenes, or vitamin A, it is used in margarine, ice cream, cheese, salad dressing, chocolate, and more. As a renewable, environmentally friendly raw material, palm oil is used extensively in soaps, shampoos, detergents, automotive parts, and fuels. Flying into Kuala Lumpur, acres and acres of palm trees made up a large part of the landscape. The Malaysian Palm Oil Board, MPOB, was established in 2000 to promote and serve Malaysia's palm oil industry, improve production efficiency, provide research, and new product development. The MPOB provides and promotes strong scientific and technological support through its commitment to R&D, even sharing new technologies throughout the industry. U.S. low-fat spread maker Smart Balance has used technology developed at MPOB to further improve its heart-healthy foods. During our visits of MPOB, we learned about the entire palm oil production process and viewed examples of products made with palm oil. With more and more land being cleared for palm production, rainforests are shrinking. We visited the Forest Research Institute of Malaysia, also known as FRIM, to learn about the importance of preserving rainforest in Southeast Asia. FRIM is one of the world's leading institutions in tropical forestry research and specializes in forest resource conservation. The highlight of the FRIM visit was walking among the rainforest treetops on the canopy walk. After an invigorating climb, the view was amazing. Built from ropes and planks, the canopy walk is 150 meters, or 492 feet, long and 30 meters, or 98 feet, above ground level. It was constructed in 1992 for scientific studies of above-ground flora and fauna. Another growing segment of the agricultural industry in Southeast Asia is aquaculture. At PKPS Farm Mart, a tilapia fish farm, we learned tilapia are a source of high protein, are tolerant of high stocking density, and grow rapidly, making them one of the easiest and most profitable species to farm. Aquaculture farms can be found in freshwater lakes, standalone ponds, cement tanks, and rice paddies. Developed in 2002 with cages placed in former tin mining pools and in concrete tanks, PKPS Farm Mart is a joint venture between a local farming family and state government, and is a model farming system for tilapia farming. The farm also has developed a partnership with Cargill. Using Cargill feed products and working with researchers on tilapia sex modification, changing females to males for higher weight. PKPS harvests 50 tons of red tilapia a month, about 600 to 700 tons per year, and is considered a large-scale operation. Fish are divided into different holding ponds and concrete tanks, and they progress through 5 stages of growth in stocking ponds or tanks until they are full grown at 500 grams. About 10% of the tilapia grown at PKPS are sold to local live fish markets. The rest are sold to markets in Singapore. Unlike the U.S., Southeast Asians prefer to choose from live fish from tanks at markets and restaurants. After 3 days in Malaysia, we were off to Thailand. Thailand is roughly the size of France and has a population of approximately 64 million people. About 75% of the population is Thais, 14% is of Chinese origin, and 3% is Malay. The rest belong to minority groups and hill tribes. It is interesting to note that Thailand is the only country in Southeast Asia that has never been ruled by a European power. Thailand is a constitutional monarchy and governed by a prime minister. King Bhumibol Adulyadej holds a place outside of the government as the ruling monarch, but is recognized as the defender of all Thai people. Great importance is given to the royal family, and pictures and shrines honoring them are found on every street and many buildings throughout the country. Bangkok is the largest city in Thailand with more than 8 million people. A vibrant and exotic city, it is a mix of beautiful ancient Buddhist temples and modern skyscrapers, luxury condominiums and riverside lean-tos, high-end shopping malls, and open-air street markets. This is all part of the experience and charm of this canal city. Built along the banks of the Chao Phraya River, or the River of Kings, the city spread inland. Many of Bangkok's historical sites are found along the river. We enjoyed an exhilarating long-tail boat ride along the bustling river, taking in sights such as the Temple of Dawn, Wat Po, and the Grand Palace. We also took a walking tour of the Royal Grand Palace, which is Thailand's most important landmark. Here we saw the Emerald Buddha, the most revered Buddha image in Thailand. As we entered the hall with the Emerald Buddha, we were asked to remove our shoes and be seated on the floor in front of the Buddha to show our respect. We then continued on to visit Wat Po, which is Bangkok's oldest temple and is home to the magnificent reclining Buddha. The reclining Buddha is more than 150 feet long and 50 feet high. His feet are covered with mother-of-pearl illustrations depicting characteristics of Buddha. We returned to the river for a traditional Thai dinner aboard a refurbished rice barge with a great view of the city lights. The ship is the only remaining antique teakwood rice barge on the Chao Phraya River. Agricultural production in Thailand is focused on 7 major crops: rice, tapioca, rubber, maize, sugarcane, mung beans, and tobacco leaves. 50% of the country's cultivated land is devoted to rice. Thailand continues to be the world's top exporter of rice, exporting 10 million tons of the 30 million tons produced in 2007-2008. Crop production is expected to increase as genetic research on plants improves yields and cultivated areas are expanded. The average rice farm is 4 to 5 hectares, and harvesting is done by a combination of machine and hand, depending on what the farmer can afford. Most small paddies are harvested by hand with neighbors helping each other. Jasmine rice is the preferred type of rice in Asia. It is softer and more fragrant than white rice. Typically, only 1 crop of jasmine rice is planted per year versus 3 to 4 crops of white rice. Chiamen Group is one of the country's largest packers and exporter of jasmine rice. Exported to more than 50 countries worldwide, it is marketed under the brand name Golden Phoenix. We visited Chiamen's mill in Bang Sue that refines up to 200 tons per day of polished rice. Rice grains are polished until clear, off-white rice is revealed. Strict quality controls check grain length, the amount of broken and unbroken grains, color, and polish. Chiameng purchases rice from local farmers. It has started a partnership with more than 12,000 farmers, offering to purchase all of the rice they produce if the farmer agrees to allow Chiameng's recommendations for seed and growing techniques. This partnership has been beneficial to all participants. As Westerners, most of us typically eat plain old crop, older than 6 months, white rice, and are not aware of the differences between the types of rice. So staff at the facility gave us a taste test, old crop versus new crop jasmine rice, to see if we could tell the difference. The president of the company was on hand to witness our amazement at the softer texture and great flavor of the new crop jasmine rice. CP Retails and Marketing Company Limited, CPRAM, specializes in frozen food manufacturing. Launched in 1988, it produces and distributes frozen, ready-to-eat foods throughout Southeast Asia, Europe, and North America under the brand names J Dragon and Deli Thai. We were treated to samples of several of their products, such as spring rolls, cream custard buns, and shrimp dumplings. The company plays a significant role in Thailand's economic development and is the exclusive brand for 7-Eleven stores in Thailand, which can be found on every street corner. They strive to live up to their slogan, "Safe Food for a Vital World," and practice stringent quality control procedures. With all of the high-tech equipment used throughout their production facility, it was interesting to watch the lines of workers hand-rolling spring rolls. The United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, ESCAP, has a membership of 62 governments and a geographical scope stretching from Turkey in the west, to the Pacific Islands nation in the east, and from the Russian Federation in the north to New Zealand in the south. Headquartered in Bangkok, it works in areas of poverty and development, trade and investment, environment, and sustainable development, and more. We met with representatives at the UN in Bangkok for briefings on the social and economic situation in Southeast Asia. We learned that just as in the U.S., inflation of food prices due to the demand for biofuels is quickly becoming an issue in Asia. The Environment Development Division is working with governments to promote sustainable agriculture and energy development in Asia to reduce poverty and curb rising food prices. We spent 3 short days exploring Bangkok streets and canals before leaving for the third and final country of our tour, Vietnam. With a population of over 86 million, Vietnam is the 13th most populous country in the world. It broke away from China in AD 938. Successive dynasties flourished in the Red River and Mekong deltas until colonization by the French in the mid-19th century. Efforts to resist the French eventually led to their expulsion from the country, leaving a nation divided politically into 2 countries. Fighting between the North and South continued during the Vietnam War, which Vietnamese call the American War, ending with a communist victory in 1975 after the fall of Saigon. Reunified but politically isolated, the government's social and economic decisions hindered post-war reconstruction, and its treatment of the losing side engendered more resentment than reconciliation. In 1986, Vietnam instituted economic and political reforms and began a path towards international reintegration. By 2000, it had established diplomatic relations with most nations. Its economic growth had been among the highest in the world in the past decade, with gains of 7 to 8% annually. These efforts culminated in Vietnam joining the World Trade Organization in 2007 and its successful bid to become a member of the United Nations Security Council in 2008. Hanoi is the capital city of Vietnam and one of the world's oldest cities, dating back to 1010. The city is a mix of centuries-old Chinese temples, French influence, internet cafes, locals selling fruit slung on shoulder poles, and an endless stream of honking motorbikes. After arriving in Hanoi, we set out on a tour of the Old Quarter Bicyclo, which is a cart powered by a man on a foot pedal bike. Being immersed in the chaotic motorbike and automobile traffic was quite a rush. Traffic signals seem more of a suggestion than rules. At intersections, all the traffic converges in the middle and weaves around each other to get through. The cyclo ride was a great way to view all of the sights and sounds of the narrow streets filled with markets. We took time to walk through the Ho Chi Minh complex. Ho Chi Minh is credited with reuniting the country and is idolized, so much so that when he died and wished to be cremated, they embalmed him and put him on display in the mausoleum. An afternoon at the Hanoi Hilton provided a picture of the grisly conditions Vietnamese political prisoners suffered under French rule. The Vietnamese took over the prison in 1956, and from 1964 to 1973, it was a major POW detention center. This is where Senator John McCain was held during the Vietnam War. Only a small portion of the prison remains as a museum. A highlight of the trip was an overnight junk boat cruise in Ha Long Bay. A few hours east of Hanoi, through the rural countryside of northern Vietnam, Ha Long Bay contains more than 3,000 giant, limestone karst formations, which rise out of the South China Sea, offering a stunning view. Local myth tells us the mountains in the bay are the footprints of the descending dragon Halong as it went to its home in the sea. During our cruise, we dined on meals of sumptuous fresh fish, shrimp, and fruit. The overnight cruise was a relaxing break from our hectic schedule. On our drive back to Hanoi, we stopped in a small village at the community house for a water puppet performance. Water puppets are the traditional northern Vietnamese theatrical art form which originated in rice paddies. The shows are performed in waist-deep pool by puppeteers hidden behind a screen using large rods to support and control the puppets under the water. The puppets appear to be moving over the water. We were entertained by the short skits featuring folk tales and stories of rice harvest, fishing, and festivals. Vietnam is now the largest producer of cashew nuts and is the second largest rice exporter in the world after Thailand. Our guide explained that rice production is still done by hand in Vietnam. In the north, they plant 2 crops a year. In the south, 3 crops. Since the farming is so labor-intensive, families and neighbors all pinch in to help each other. Besides rice, key exports are coffee, tea, rubber, and fish products. Our guide told us there are 2 types of land in Vietnam since the reunification in 1986, farming and residential. All land is distributed by the government based on family size. Farmland is assigned for 20 years, after which time it will be redistributed. Residential land does not get reassigned, but families pay for a long-term lease to remain on the property. There is no true land ownership. While in North Vietnam, we visited a tobacco feed mill. Tobacco is Vietnam's largest feed miller and is jointly owned by the government and the People's Committee Agricultural Products Joint Stock Co. Tobacco has 3 feed mill locations in Vietnam and produces over 300,000 metric tons of hog, poultry, and fish feed per year. A member of the American Soybean Association explained the company imports soybean meal for its feed. Most of the feed produced at Tobacco goes to the company's hog and poultry farms. The rest goes to a government agency that sells to small farmers. Our last morning in Hanoi, a team from Cargill, Vietnam, picked us up and took us to 3 backyard hog farms. When they say backyard, they literally mean in the backyard of homes. We visited 3 different sizes: small with 6 sows, medium with around 10 to 12 sows, and a large farm with 30 sows or 100 hogs. One of the farmers invited us into his house for tea, and we learned about his family and farm. He chose Cargill as their feed source because of the company's reputation and the performance of the feed, even though it costs more than traditional feed. After touring the hog farms, we returned to the city and walked through several wet markets. Unlike the West, where grocery stores are common, Vietnamese shop street markets for all of their food, including live or freshly slaughtered poultry and fish products. Most shop daily, as refrigeration is not widely available in homes. In South Vietnam, we were guests at Cargill for a tour of one of their feed mills. Cargill was the first U.S. company to enter Vietnam after the U.S. lifted its economic embargo in 1994 and owns 5 feed mills in Vietnam. It has become a prestigious animal feed producer in the country. It was interesting to see the differences between Cargill's facility and Tobacco. Cargill's plant was larger and used more high-tech equipment. They processed 24,000 tons annually of feed for hogs, poultry, and fish, which is all sold domestically. Dried distillers' grains are imported from the U.S. for use in the feed that they produce. Our last destination of the trip was Ho Chi Minh City, also known as Saigon, in the southern half of Vietnam. Saigon is the largest city in Vietnam with more than 8 million people and 3 million motorbikes. It is Vietnam's commercial headquarters. Our first stop in Saigon was the War Remnants Museum, formerly called the War Crimes Museum. It documents both the French and American wars and includes photos, propaganda, tanks, weaponry, and aircraft. The Vietnamese believe the museum is a call for peace and hope that history will not be repeated. We also stopped by the Reunification Palace, formerly the Presidential Palace, when Saigon served as the capital of the Republic of South Vietnam. South of the city is the Mekong Delta. We crossed the Mekong River on a local ferry and walked through the second biggest coconut tree orchard in Vietnam. Rides in small canoes, paddled by local women, offered an up-close view of the small canals and arroyos lined with palm and coconut trees and floating fish farms. During one of our drives, we stopped where a small group of local villagers were harvesting rice. We learned plant seedlings are started in beds and after 30 to 50 days are transplanted by hand to the fields. The fields are flooded by rain or river water. During the growing season, irrigation is maintained by dike-controlled canals or by hand watering. The fields are allowed to drain before cutting. They invited us into the paddy for a lesson in using sickles to cut the rice stalks. The rice was bundled and carried to a small cart where it will be transported to fields to dry. A little further down the road, we stopped at a rubber tree grove. Row after row of the tall trees were on both sides of the road. Our guide showed us how they cut the bark on the trees to allow the latex to drip into coconut shell catching basins. The trees are marked with black bands to show where previous cuts have been made. This allows a panel of bark to heal before it is tapped again. Fresh from the tree, it is stringy and stretchy like a rubber band. After stopping in the rice paddy and rubber tree grove, we visited the Cu Chi tunnels. The 75-mile-long complex of tunnels at Cu Chi has been preserved by the government of Vietnam and turned into a war memorial park. Started during the war with the French, the tunnels were expanded during the Vietnam War with meeting rooms, kitchens, and triage areas, as well as booby traps. The tunnels were used by Viet Cong guerrillas as hiding spots during combat, as well as serving as communication and supply routes, hospitals, food and weapon caches, and living quarters for numerous guerrilla fighters. Some of the group braved the dark and narrow tunnels to see what it was like to travel underground. The people in each of the countries were friendly and very gracious. Everywhere we went, we were greeted with smiles. The group was unsure of what the reception would be in Vietnam, but the people were amazingly generous and kind. This trip truly was a journey beyond the ordinary and a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to experience these exotic cultures.